To be comprehensive, let's just go ahead and implement our sign-up feature. Now, this isn't really going to be anything new conceptually, but we're going to want it to make sure that our app functions in kind of a complete fashion. So let's go ahead and go to our command line, and I'm going to create a new component that's going to, if I bring up my code, it's going to live in source under this auth subfolder. I currently have this login component. Let's just make a signup component to go with it. So again, back in my console, and note that I can be watching my app over in one console, and in another, I can go ahead and generate that new component. So I'm going to generate a component. I'll call it sign up, and it will be located in the auth folder. And you notice as that happens, you can see on the left side, my app says, okay, I see that signup.js was added, and I see that signup.html was added. So yeah, you can create new files and keep watching the app. No need to stop that. So if I go back to my code base, I see I've got my signup.html and my signup.js. So we might be thinking, what do we need to do to sign up? And a good place to look to figure that out would be our auth service. So let's open the common folder, our services folder, and take a peek at the auth service. And if I scroll down to sign up, well, it just takes a name. And what's basically going on here is it says that if our current array of users in the system does not include that name, then we are going to add it to the list of names. We are then going to set this.currentUser equal to the name, meaning we are quote unquote logging that user in, and we are sending that user's name back with this resolve. On the other hand, if the user array in this auth service includes the user that's trying to sign up already, then we are going to throw this new error that the user already exists. So we'll want to be able to make sure we account for both of those cases, but pretty importantly, the only input that we need from our user is going to be a name. So let's go back to our signup.html. Instead of saying message here, let's just say sign up. We can create a form, and within this form, let's create a text input. And perhaps we'll give it a placeholder that says name. And then we can create a button. And we'll give that a type of submit. And we'll just say sign up. Okay, and then in our input, let's just go ahead and we're going to, if we recall our two-way binding convention, we are going to bind the value of this input to the name property of our view model. And then in this form, when we actually submit, we are going to want to delegate that to a method on our view model, and we can just call that sign up. So the form gets submitted. We are going to use the signup method on our view model, and we're probably going to want to do something with the name property of our view model. Okay, so let's go back to the view model, signup.js. We no longer need this in the constructor. Let's create our signup method. And then to do anything here, well, we're going to want this auth service, so let's bring that into our view model. We know that we are going to want to use dependency injection to make sure that we are using the same instance of the auth service. So let's go ahead and import the inject container from the Aurelia framework first. And then we can import the auth service from common services auth service. We use our decorator convention and inject the auth service. And then in our constructor, we will make sure to set the auth service property of our view model. And finally in, finally in signup, we can use the auth service. So this .auth service dot, and let's just refresh ourselves. It's just the sign up method. This dot auth service dot sign up. We are going to use this dot name because once again, that's what we did our two-way binding with on our input. And then we are going to do something in the successful case, and we are going to catch any errors. So if there's an error, we can handle that case first because that seems easiest at this point. If there's an error, we can show an error to our user, and we've done this before, so I can take that code from the login view, and I'm just going to take this and go back to signup.html. I can put this above our form here. So then I will just say this dot error equals error.message. Great. And in the successful case, well, what do we want to do? Well, actually, perhaps we want to do something pretty similar to what we did in the login form. And if we go back to our login view model, we can recall that, well, we know that our user's logged in, so we're going to publish to the event aggregator to tell everywhere in our app that we've got a new user definition here. And then we're also going to navigate to the home route. So why don't we pull that in, and then we'll include those dependencies accordingly. Go back to our signup.js, and within the successful case here, we are going to publish data.name, navigate to the route home, but we don't have the event aggregator and we don't have the router yet, so let's import those. And we have to include them here as well. And then finally include them in the constructor. Ooh, just use the EA shorthand. Great. So this looks pretty good to me. And so what I'm going to do now is make sure we include this in our router, the signup route. And additionally, we're going to want to make sure that the signup link in our nav bar functions as we would expect. So let's go to our app.js, our app view model, and go to our router configuration. And so this is going to be pretty similar to the login route. So I'm going to copy that, and we'll just make sure that we change all these logins to signup. And our title is going to be sign up. And then finally, let's go to our app.html and make sure that our sign up navigation link works correctly. So we are going to, instead of going nowhere when it's clicked, we are going to say route href equals sign up. And then additionally, we can bring in this conditional active display logic. So we'll pull that over as well. And we'll say instead, if the active route is sign up, then make sure it displays. So that was quite a bit quickly, but there's no new concepts that we introduced. So hopefully you followed along, and if not, feel free to pause and catch up. And let's also make sure in our signup view model that we go ahead and default our error message to null. And then anytime the signup button is clicked, we want to make sure that the error is assumed to not exist until it actually does exist. So let's head on over to our application, and I'm going to click on the signup link in my nav bar, and I can see that's working correctly. It's highlighting the correct route. And then the first thing I'm going to try to do is log in as Jane Doe. And I know that Jane Doe exists in my system, so I should expect this to cause an error. And it does. Error, the user already exists. Fantastic. So then I'm going to try to sign up with a new name. So maybe I'll say John Smith and click sign up. Okay. So now we're looking at our home page. We're viewing all the posts, and importantly, we see welcome John Smith now. So I indeed have been added to the system as a user, and I've also been logged in. Very cool. That was quick, and we got the sign up functionality working, at least in this really basic case. So awesome. What we might want to do next now is we have a new post link at the top in our nav bar, but we don't handle that quite yet, so I think we should. So how about we go back to our code and think how we want to do this? Well, it seems like an entirely new functionality to me. I think it's probably going to not reuse anything we've done thus far, so I think it's safe to create a totally new component, and we can probably do that within our posts folder because it has to do with posts. So let's create, I'd say, a post component, and we can call that the create component. We'll go back to our console and let's generate a new component. We can call it create, and let's put it in the posts folder. So it's been created and our app took notice. So let's look within the create.js and create HTML files. We will change this header to say create post. And then let's think a little bit about what we need in a post. And I can go back to the browser and let's just maybe take a look at one of these full posts. So let's see, what do we have here? We have a title. We have an author, but I think we're going to make sure that we assume that from whoever's logged in. We have a date, but I think we are going to want to assume that from whatever time that it's submitted. We have any number of tags that might be associated with that post. And then we are going to have the body of a post, which is probably going to be some larger text area that we're going to want to look at. Okay, so since this is a somewhat larger form, certainly than our login and sign up forms, I'm going to stick a little closer to how Bootstrap might implement a form. So let's do a form here, and let's start using the form group div class. So I'm going to create a form group, and then I will create a label. And this will be our label for the title. And then I will create an input for the title. So this is just going to be a text type input. And the class is form control. This is all Bootstrap stuff. It's just to make it look a little nicer than our login and sign up forms looked. So I can give this a placeholder. We can say your post title. And that looks good to me. And then I will create a new form group. And this one will be for the body of our posts. So I will just say label for body. And we'll say body. And we will, instead of doing an input, we can do a text area to accommodate more text. We will give it a number of rows, so I can give it 10 rows, for example, and that'll make it a little taller. So perhaps I won't do the tags quite yet. Let me just go ahead and create our submit button. So this will be a button, and the type will be submit. The class, we can say button primary, and we can just say create post. Great. So let me just go ahead and add this to our router. We're going to open up the app.js file and go down to our router. And let's just create a new route. Perhaps we'll copy it copy a different route and create it, and we'll call it create post. The create post route sounds good enough to me. And the name can be create post, or actually let's just use the same convention we've been using. Our module ID will be just create, because within our posts folder it is the create component, and our title can just be create posts. Cool. So then the final thing we want to do is go to our app.html, and in our nav bar, let's make sure that this new post page is able to be accessed. So, and we are going to want to do the same conditional styling for the active link. So we'll just bring that code over and say if this is named create post, then this will be our active route. Very good. So let's go back to our application, and you'll notice that it keeps kicking us out. It keeps signing us out every time that we come back to our application. That's because if we go back to our console, we are watching the changes that's being made to the code base, and anytime that happens, the app is refreshed. And since our logged in state is just maintained in memory in the app, anytime it refreshes, it loses that. So we're going to have to start logging in anytime we want to check this out. Could end up being a pain, but that's okay. So let's just go ahead and log in as Jane Doe, and we can click new post. And okay, here we go. We have the option to create a post. We got a title and we've got a body. So that's pretty cool. We don't have tags quite yet, but let's see if we can rig this up to submit a post just with the title and body. And then maybe we can start thinking about how tags might work. All right, going back to our code, let's bring open our post service. So go into common services, post service. And if we want to find the method to create a post, here we go. So it takes a post. So this is a post object that comes in. What it does is it says the current user is retrieved from the auth service. So it makes sure that whenever a post is created, it's attributed to whatever user is logged in. It then creates a slug for the post, and that's going to be in the URL. It's going to be kind of a prettier URL than some database ID, for example. And then it says, okay, if there is a current user, let's go ahead and add this post to our existing array of posts, and it gets the title from the submitted post. It gets the body from the submitted post. It makes sure to say that the author is the current user that's signed in. It takes the slug that's just been generated. It takes the array of tags that have been submitted with our post, and we're not quite there yet, so maybe we'll find a way to just submit that as an empty or null. And then finally, the created at date for the post is just a new date, so no problem there. And then what it does is it sends back a slug if it's been successful. And the only way it's unsuccessful, at least in this really, really simple case, is if someone is not logged in to create the post. So what's cool is when this slug is resolved, when we get this back, we can then use that provided slug to directly view the post that has just been created. So, you know, that could be a lot, but we're going to walk through how this actually works now. So let's go back to our create.js, our view model, and let's bring in our post service. So first we want to bring in the dependency injection container. So let's import inject from the Aurelia framework. Then let's import our post service. And we'll do this from common services, post service. And we will use our decorator and inject the post service. And in our constructor, let's set the post service Great. And so let's go back to our create.html, our form here, and let's go ahead and say, well, we want to make sure that we do something on submit for this form. So perhaps we will submit.delegate, and we will delegate to a method, and we can call this create post. And well, we aren't currently binding the input and the text area anywhere, so that's what we're going to want to do now. We can value bind this input, but to make things easier on ourselves, what we can do is just have some post property object of our view model, and then what we can do is the title property of that post object can be bound to this input, so that all we'll have to do is then send our post object on the back end, and everything should work pretty well here. So let's go ahead and add this as well to our text area. And I'm going to go ahead and copy this value bind to our text area. And this will be post.body. Great. So the next thing I'm going to do is go to my create.js view model, and let's use that create post method that we promised our form that we would have, and we will use our post service. And let's just remind ourselves, if we go to our post service, it's just the create method, and we are just going to send the post along, because this is, if we recall, if we go to our view, this is the post that has our title and our body, and we don't have any tags yet, but that's okay. We're just going to create posts without tags right now. So this is a promise, so let's say then data, and we're going to do something with that data. I think for now we can just go ahead and log it, and we should feel pretty good about it if we log our data. Then not then. And then we have to catch any errors that we have. And perhaps we'll just console log that for now as well. So before we hit any errors, let's make sure this should be this.post, since it's the post attribute of our create view model. And let's go back to our application. Let's log in as Jane Doe. And let's create a new post, and Control-Shift-J if you're using Chrome to check out the dev tools. And I will say test new post. This is a post, and I'll hit create. Great. And so if you look at the console, what's been returned is test new post, and what this is the slug of the new post. So what I can do is I can click the home button, and I'm viewing all posts. I can see now, hey, this is the new post that was created. It's got today's date, which is February 3rd, 2018, 3:13 p.m. By Jane Doe. And it's got the body preview, which for me is actually the entire body. But yeah, if I click view, I can see that our slug is test new post, which was returned here in the dev tools. So I can actually use that information to actually just navigate right to the view of this new post and skip having to kind of navigate back around to find it. So let's do that now. So instead of console logging this data, let's bring in our router. So import router from Aurelia router, and make sure to inject it. And so now I can use this router to go ahead and navigate to the route. So this router.navigate to route, and we are going to go to the post view, and we are going to pass the parameter of data.slug. Perfect. So let's go ahead and open up our browser. Let's log in again as Jane Doe. Let's create a new post. Test new post. This is the body. Create post. All right, so we created the new post, and then since it was successful, we were redirected to the post view, and using that slug, it knew exactly where to take us. So now we're just viewing the post that we created. Awesome.